Good evening. My name is Kyle Simonson.
And my name is Selena Thompson.
And we are here representing the Dakota Foundation, offering a presentation on the ethical analysis of the Dakota Access Pipeline to the office of the ASACW.
Our recommendation is primarily going to be driven off of the ethical considerations of this case as it relates to the key stakeholders, as well as explaining the legal aspects and financial implications of our recommendation. The issue as Dakota Foundation sees it is whether or not the Army Corps should grant easement of the Dakota Access Pipeline to run under Lake Oahe. Our recommendation is that this easement should not be granted and instead a new proposal of the route of the pipeline should be given.
It's important to consider why the Dakota Access Pipeline project was created. Between 2005 and 2015, there was a tenfold increase in crude oil production in the North Dakota area due to increased development of technology in direct drilling and fracking technology to access the Bakken oil fields. The limitations of the pipeline infrastructure during this peak forced 70% of crude oil to be transported via rail. There's a number of issues with this. First, rail, although it is considered more flexible, is not as cost effective, not considered as safe, and it overburdened the railway systems that other industries rely on.
There were many initial proposals of where the Dakota Access Pipeline would run. One of these initial proposals is displayed by the dotted line on the map here. This proposal would have ran about 10 miles north of Bismarck, North Dakota, which is a predominantly white community with very strong political capital within the state. Moving forward as to where we stand today with the initial current pipeline, which is represented by the black line. This is just half a mile north of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, running underneath their primary source of drinking water, and also running through land that was formerly granted to them in the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851. In this treaty, Article 12 states that no cession of land would be considered valid unless approved by 3/4 of the male tribe members. Moving forward, the Act of February 28th of 1877 occurred, and this took away a large majority of the land that was granted to the Sioux, disregarding Article 12 and the treaty. Nearly 100 years later, the U.S. Supreme Court evaluated this in a different case and can be quoted that a more ripe and rank case of dishonorable dealings in all probability will never be found in our history.
The divvying up and creation of strict borders is consistent with the Western view of water and land rights in that we hold domain over these things. However, it's inconsistent with the Native American perspective that all things are related and that we should care for, nurture, and share these things.
The key stakeholders in this case that are going to be affected are the Standing Rock Sioux and the pipeline owners. The secondary stakeholders being the U.S. government, the state of North Dakota, environmental groups, and then consumers and taxpayers as well.
When government takes up civil projects, they often are guided by the concept of utilitarianism, which weighs the benefits and costs that it places on society. Our view is that the pipeline does meet this criteria because it is more cost efficient, it is considered more safe, and it allows the U.S. to become more energy independent. This is consistent with the U.S. ACE's mission to promote economic activity. This, however, does not speak well to where a pipeline should be located because it does not take into consideration other ethical concepts such as respecting moral rights. We as individuals all have a responsibility to protect our own rights as well as others, and surely the government and its agencies have a duty to protect that as well. Enshrined in the Bill of Rights is a concept that we should all be able to freely practice our religion. You'll find that many religions cherish many different sites and ideas as sacred. For example, the Wailing Wall, Mecca, and Bethlehem beyond the Jordan. Although we may not understand the American Indian perspective and why they hold this particular swatch of land important to their cultural and religious respects, it is important that we hold their claims as valid.
As Assistant Secretary of the Army, part of their duties is to protect national cemeteries. So consider if there was a pipeline to be running and it was going through a potential site of our fallen war heroes. This is likely not something that we would be okay with. This further validates the Standing Rock Sioux's claim that we should respect their moral rights to this land. It is something that they deem as sacred. Relationships are viewed as a strong part of society, which is the basis of understanding ethics of care. We shouldn't view relationships as a series of winning and losing, placing importance only on winning, but instead emphasize that we need to preserve these relationships with empathy and care for others. The U.S. and the Native Americans have had a very strained relationship in the past, and the Sioux feel that they have been taken advantage of over the years. We should offer them a sign of good faith that we care about our relationship with one another in rerouting the pipeline.
This ties well with the concept of restorative justice. This seeks to establish rehabilitation through reconciliation with those communities that have been historically marginalized. In applying that, there are numerous successful examples of this in the history. For example, the Truth and Reconciliation process that occurred in the post-apartheid South Africa. And the United States government practices in the form of affirmative action. And applying this to our case, rerouting the pipeline would serve to reverse the trend of historical injustices that the American Indians have borne and are still feeling the pain of today.
The legal aspects of this case are very complex. However, a few things that we want to point out to you are Nationwide Permit 12 was implemented for the Dakota Access Pipeline. What this means is that the pipeline is now exempt from undergoing environmental review that is typically required by the Clean Water Act. Additionally, Section 106 of the NHPA is known as the Stop, Look, and Listen provision. This emphasizes care and taking the public's view into consideration, as well as consultation, with consultation placing an emphasis on respecting the government-to-government relationship between the U.S. and the tribal sovereign nations. However, this consultation may exist. This is not equivalent to an agreement, nor does it necessarily align with ethical values.
The negative implications of our proposal is that it will increase the total project cost in the Dakota Access Pipeline. This is realized in some costs of pipeline already laid, as well as costs that would be attributed to a reroute. These can be pushed off through legal means or through passing costs off to customers and ultimately consumers. The positive implications still stand, that it reduces significantly the cost to transport crude oil, as well as boosting state and local tax revenues.
Our recommendation is that the pipeline should be rerouted to the initial proposal to run north of Bismarck. We should reach out to restore our relationship with the Sioux tribe. Although there are legal implications, this will be worked out in the courts, and regardless of the financial burden, it would be unethical to allow the Dakota Access Pipeline to continue as proposed.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Darcy, for allowing us to present to you and your team.